Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being so kind to me and validating me and listening to me as I tell it. I don't know if this next part, I don't know, but I'm just gonna read to you. So from where we left off, it's about August 2023 is where I left off. And August is always a tough month for me. It's when my younger brother died in a farming accident. And in August 2023, that would have been the 10-year mark. 10 years out from a loss like that, the wound isn't as raw and ragged as it once was, but something about the weight of a decade, it hits differently. It's not just about the grief anymore, it's about all the time that's gone by without them. A full 10 years of birthdays, holidays, ordinary days, where their absence is still a presence. That kind of 10-year milestone opens up a new layer of grief. It's quieter, maybe, but it's still deep and it still aches. During that time, I wasn't here on TikTok as regularly as I always had been in the years previous. I was spending my social media energy at that point in the yoga community on Instagram. I was doing daily yoga challenges, I was posting, connecting, and I suppose keeping my nervous system moving. And this will matter in a bit here, so I'm going to explain. If you're not familiar with how Instagram stories work there, when someone views your story and there's suggested reactions that you can tap, so like a heart or clapping hands, it sends that reaction straight into your DMs. So if you were to click on my story and you did a heart, it would send that to my DMs. That's how I would see that you hearted it. It shows up like you messaged me, even if you didn't actually say anything. It creates a kind of implied intimacy or the illusion of connection. And where this is leading is, I think that the next devalue phase was due. So the thing with my brother and it being 10 years and it's all gonna, I hope, make sense, tie in. It's tied, but I hope it'll make sense. And despite what I can see clearly now, the relationship was emotionally and romantically so very over at that point in August of 2023. But at that point, we had already kind of failed out of, if you will, our first round of couples therapy, the Regain therapist. And so at that point, I was just soothing myself into a mental holding pattern, a mindset that was just survive, just coast, just exist. At that point, my refrain was kind of, until the girls are in college. It's a sport, I'm not flashing you. That was kind of my thought, that for some reason the decision would be not only easier then, but better for everybody then. I had stopped complaining. I'd stopped asking for anything. I'd stopped trying to change the dynamic between Matt and I, which is maybe why it looked to him that things were improving. I'd mentioned the other day walk-away wife syndrome, where the woman stops fighting, stops nagging, stops pushing for change. And from the outside, it seems like the relationship is better, but really it's that the walk-away wife is just emotionally done. She's already halfway out the door, and maybe totally out the door emotionally. And that was me at that point. So it almost made it easier to live and be around him. And then, right around the time of my brother's death anniversary, Matt started altering the dynamic again, because narcissistic, manipulative people have a pattern. They can't tolerate not being the center of attention. so they find a way to insert themselves into even the most sacred or devastating moments. You've been along with me in the story for many of those. Weddings, funerals, hospital rooms, or in this case, a decade of grief for a dead brother. These moments that should belong to someone else's heart, whether it's joy or heartache, get hijacked by narcissistic, manipulative people. The spotlight gets redirected, and suddenly it's about their feelings, their pain, their inconvenience, their needs, not yours. In my notes from that week, because I found some, I had said in the last post that my 5-year journal goes dark for a lot of the 2 years that I'm going to try to catch you up on, and it does, but I do still have some. And I actually found a treasure trove in my phone. There's a lot of audio messages, like voice memos, and an iPhone app. Anyway, so in my notes from that week, in my 5-year journal, I wrote that on August 19th, I was digging and moving sod on one of the sides of the pool cage, getting ready to put in some new landscaping. I remember, and that helps me remember really clearly, just August is really hot in Florida, or anywhere in the northern hemisphere. Sweat in my eyes, really, really hot. And I specifically remember that my phone was inside charging, and Matt had gone into the house to get water. But he didn't come back, and he didn't come back, and he didn't come back, and not for a very long time. And then this thought hits me, he's looking through my phone. Because whenever it's away from me, he looks through it, and every time he does, he seems to find something to be angry about. And here's the thing, when someone goes digging through your phone with the intention of catching you, they're going to find something. Even if there's nothing truly wrong, they'll twist a smiley emoji, a joke, a like on someone's post into evidence of betrayal or something that they can get mad at you for. That level of hypervigilant surveillance always finds a threat because it needs to. It's not about truth, it's about control. I kept working, even though, and I remember that even though that hit me, that I bet he's looking through my phone, and knowing him, he'll find something. And I remember kind of the pit, the dread just sinking into the pit of my stomach. But at that point, I had been in therapy for 2 years, and I just knew there was nothing, that I hadn't done anything. So, but the fact that I hadn't come back out, it was just like, I had already been going through in my head, what could he possibly be mad at? I know he's found something. He will find something. I could feel this shift though, as I waited for him. Just this, sucks being an empath, doesn't it? I want to be a recovering empath, just like I'm looking forward and trying to be a recovering codependent. But anyway, I could just feel this dark, I wrote down a dark, angry energy pouring from the house like a fog. And even though I hadn't done anything wrong, I still felt guilty, because that's what long-term emotional surveillance does to you. Even when you know you're clean, the fact that someone constantly still needs to search anyway, it makes you wonder, am I bad? Am I just deep down a bad seed? Is there something truly wrong with me that he has to watch me? Eventually I went inside, bracing myself, and sure enough, he's avoiding eye contact. Heavy air, he's silent and cold. And I asked, what's wrong? And he said nothing. And let's be honest, when someone weaponizes the word, it's nothing. When there very obviously is something, that's control too. It's punishment. It's making you grovel, squirm. They're not just gonna tell you. You're gonna have to beg for it. I want you to feel the weight of my unspoken disapproval until you beg for it to stop. And back in the early years, I would have crumbled. We're starting page 3 of 6. You still with me? I would have tiptoed around him, trying to fix it, trying to put good energy, I don't know, back into the house without even knowing what it was that I'm in trouble for. But I wrote, I think like I was alluding to a moment ago, but by now I'd been in therapy for 2 years. I was stronger. And so that night after the girls were asleep, I confronted him more directly. I can't remember this as perfectly, but I think I probably said, I know you were in my phone. I can tell. I could usually tell just with like what programs were what apps were left open or what screen was whatever. And sure enough, he said that he saw that I had been DMing, direct messaging men on Instagram, sending them pictures of myself. And even worse, I was sending them without their solicitation. And I said, what are you talking about? I don't send DMs to guys. That's not something I do. I get DMs, but I don't respond. Look in my texts. And he insisted that I do. And so I handed him my phone and I said, where? And he jabbed his finger at one of the DMs I received. It was a reaction from a man to a yoga pose that I'd posted in my Instagram story. He hadn't sought to understand. He's not on Instagram. And he hadn't asked or, again, sought to understand that on Instagram, when someone reacts to your story, it shows up in your DMs, direct messages inbox, as a message, but it's not you who initiated anything. I can't control who looks at my stories. And if he'd bothered to look at the messages of the same line from women who also liked, clapped, whatever, reacted to my stories, he would have seen the exact same format, which is what I then showed him. Here's the same thing from, here's women. You didn't click on those, did you? And I thought maybe he would realize that he was wrong, that it's just a misunderstanding, and that he'd apologize. But he didn't, because I hadn't realized yet that it wasn't about Instagram. It wasn't about yoga. We had reached the devalue phase of the cycle of abuse. He needed something to be angry about. He needed a reason to turn me into the villain, I wrote, because that's what this pattern requires. Chaos, accusation, and then punishment. When there's no actual offense, a manipulator will invent one, because it's not the truth that drives them. Power does. And part of me believes, and this wasn't until I feel like I had processed that at some point earlier than today. But today, as I did put all this together and type it up, is when I realized that, and why I mentioned my brother's passing 10 years prior and the time of year it was. Today is when I part of me believes it wasn't just, we weren't due for another devalue. It was the week of my brother's death anniversary. August 19th would be 3 days before it. This is a time I needed tenderness, emotional presence, support. Because the days even leading up to the anniversary of my brother's death are also very hard for me. because of stuff that was going on in my life at that time, crazily coinciding with all of that. But it was a time I needed presence, support, emotional tenderness. But instead of offering that, he needed the attention pivoted to him. Maybe because he didn't want to be available to me in my grief. Because being emotionally present costs him something. But if he flips the script and is the wounded one, the one who was wronged, then that keeps him in control. And it keeps me and my nervous system off balance. We're almost at the end of page 4 of what I typed today. So then I wrote August 22nd in my 5-year journal. It's the hardest day for me, the anniversary of losing my younger brother. And what I wrote in my 5-year journal on August 22nd, 2023 was, one of the things was, told Matt that the expectations he has of a relationship cannot be met with me. Cool. So on a day where it would have been healing to have space for grief, I instead had to cater to an adult toddler, emotionally babysit a grown man, be the villain in a story that I didn't write. See, I can't say things like this when I'm talking live. Maybe that's why I don't know. I just wanted to type today's. I was struggling with proceeding. And then the rest of the entries from that week feel like watching myself crumble all over again as I flipped through it after my lunch today. The stuff I write sounds like I say that I'm on the verge of a mental break. I think I said my nervous system is frayed. Was the words in the journal. My sleep was trash. My nervous system threadbare. My spirit quiet. And honestly, it probably didn't help that I was at that point sleeping in a closet. And I don't love saying that out loud. It's not something that I really want to remember. Maybe talk more about it at some point. But I was just trying to find that I had, as talked about in the last one, for the first year down here from June 2022 to about June 2023, I was with him in the bedroom because there's only 3 bedrooms and both of my daughters had their own bedroom. And then in the last post I had talked about, but there was a point where it was just like, I can't do it. I tried and I can't. And so I started sleeping in a closet. Because I was trying to find a space, any space that didn't belong to him, that didn't demand that I go through emotional jumping jacks, jump through hoops just to be able to fall asleep. When you look back how deeply I internalized the idea that I didn't deserve peace or space, that in order to avoid conflict, I needed to fold myself down into a closet. I shrunk myself to survive. August 29th of 2023, I wrote yelled at and falsely accused of many a thing by Matt in my 5-year journal. I didn't write what he accused me of. I was probably too tired, too depleted, probably too numb to even care. And then the next day in my 5-year journal, I wrote Tamara, my therapist, commented on my depressed, blunted affect over telehealth. I think usually I saw her in person, but there must have been something that day that it was over. I think my kids were sick. Anyway, she wants to see me in person the day after tomorrow. And I'm sure I tried to say, oh, I'm just tired. My kids are homesick. No, yeah. Yep, that's what it was. but she could probably see it in my face, the flatness, the dissociation. And that same day, Matt had been home with the girls all day while I worked. And something else that I wrote was how somehow, despite Matt being home all day, I was the one expected to prompt toothbrushing, to ask if homework was done, and to keep the train on the tracks. Because when you're in a dynamic like that, everything is your job, your responsibility, but nothing is your authority. August 31st, I wrote, "Interesting what a year brings," which then I was like, oh, well, obviously, look, that's what I love about these 5-year journals. Look at the entry directly above it to 2022, where I wrote, "Matt slipping back into old habits. It's like a breadcrumb I had left for future me. A whisper of, this isn't new. It's all a pattern." And so that day, when Tamara said what I'm about to say, it's like it hit me like a ton of bricks. An epiphany, shattering me wide open. She believed I was displaying, and what I was talking about, that I was caught in a domestic violence cycle of abuse. She mapped it out like this. In June of 2023, Matt had started the ketamine treatments, as I spoke about in past posts of around that time. And it had triggered a honeymoon phase, affectionate, cooperative, present, and then school started, and his stress ramped up. He's a teacher. He became eggshells Matt, easily irritated, passive-aggressive, emotionally volatile. Then came the phone invasion, the accusations, the unresolved fury, despite me explaining what it was. And just like that, we were in the discard phase. Not because I failed, but because he needed it. He needed to devalue me, to punish me, to make me the reason that he didn't feel good, to make me the reason that the relationship didn't seem like it was working, to make me the reason that he couldn't show up for me emotionally. That's how the cycle works. Tension, blow up, reconciliation, period of calm, and then tension again. Each turn is designed to keep you spinning, unsure of where you stand, until standing feels impossible. That was the end of page 6. If you listened, thank you. I hope you have a good day.